What's going down, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Commander Ad Populum. Together we are Commander for the people, by the people, for the people. My name is Ryan. This is episode 32. Welcome. We've got a very special guest lined up today, so we'll get through some of the quick business and then we'll get right into it. This episode, along with many before it, are brought to you by FusionGamingOnline.com. They are there for all of your Magic needs. Of course, you can check out Commander Ad Populum along with Fusion-sponsored content on themanabase.com. Big thank you to all of the Patreon supporters as well, of course. Patreon.com/CadPopcast. Couldn't do it without you guys. We do have a little bit of a family over on our Discord channel. It's one of the benefits to being a patron, as well as a few other perks to my altered art card painting business. If you're into altars, you can check me out on Twitter at CadPopcast, and of course Commander Ad Populum on the Facebooks. If you want to head over, give me a like, give me a follow, share with your friends, do whatever you can to help the show grow. I'd very much appreciate that. Having said all that, I think I did this all fast enough to keep the music playing under my voice. I hope that I found a long enough song in post. Let's get into the interview just after the volume goes back up.
I don't deny there's some strange evolutionary process going on, but mankind won't be destroyed. The fact that you and I are working here today is evidence of that.
Okay, we are back. I am here with my good friend Joey Schultz, all the way from downtown metropolitan high-rise floor-to-ceiling windows, always raining Seattle. Joey, how are you tonight?
I am doing very, very well. Definitely raining here in Seattle.
Penthouse suite, though. Can't complain, right?
I mean, if I had a penthouse suite, I couldn't complain.
Well, no complaining tonight either way. So you're here tonight. Let everybody listening along at home, in their cars, wherever, let everybody know where you're from, what you do.
Yeah, my name is Joey Schultz. I'm the main podcast host of the EDHRECast, where we examine the data on EDHREC, and we try to give it more context than just the sheer numbers represent on the site. I also do some behind-the-scenes work for the website too, and I'm the main editor for the article content on EDHREC. Oh, and I guess I should mention, I also write my own series there. It's called Commander Showdown, and on that series, I compare and contrast two commanders that have sort of similar abilities to find the differences in their strategy and deck construction. But basically, I do a bunch of stuff for EDHREC.
Sweet. Well, it's good to have you. We've got some pretty cool topics lined up. Your I'll say backstory is very similar to mine. Very long time or astute listeners of Commander Ad Populum are going to know what that means. But before we get to it, quick hits.
All right, hit me with them.
Okay, first one. Tips for aspiring podcasters who record remotely or not in the same room as their co-hosts.
Oh, man. This has been something that's sometimes difficult for us on the EDHRECast because my co-hosts Matt and Dana are also off in different areas as well. Something that I found, since I am sort of the main driver of that podcast, at the beginning of the cast, what I would often do is pose an open-ended question for anyone to answer, at which point both Dana and Matt would jump in and we would have a bit of a stumble, a foible, which would then we would have to, edit that out. So something that I've found to be pretty important is actually directing a question to a specific person. And I wish that I had known that lesson before I started, but that has been one of the bigger improvements for sure, is when I ask an open-ended question, but then direct it to a specific person so that we don't have any of those stumbles.
I actually like that. I never even would have thought of that until I did it, but I never do it because it's either just me and somebody on the other end like yourself or myself and Brando on CCO. So actually that's really good. You mentioned Dana and Matt. Next quick hit. What is it like to have to share airtime with two players who truly and obviously don't appreciate the power of black?
Oh, yeah. Matt is Mr. Selesnya. Even though he is Mr. Selesnya, he always likes to rant and rave about how good his Valduk deck is, which is mono red, which, like, to his credit, it is a really good deck. And Dana doesn't completely disrespect the color black because he does have, like, a Glissa the Trader deck here and there, but usually he's playing something like green or blue. Yeah, neither of them really respect how awesome necromancy is, but that is sort of my goal for the podcast. It's not necessarily just for me to bring interesting observations about the data on EDHREC to our awesome listeners. It's also secretly sort of a propaganda piece so that I can tell other people how amazing necromancy is and why they should be using the graveyard all the time.
That leads into our next quick hit. What's your favorite color to pair with black?
It's probably got to be green. Green just enables so many bonkers strategies. I think that I could genuinely play just green and black for the rest of my Magic career, and I would be happy. I've built the Gitrog Monster.
Hey, that would be a good quick hit. What would be that's it? You already answered it, but
yeah, well, like
that would be a good question.
I've built Marin, I've built the Gitrog Monster, I've tried building Mazarek. I've also got a Virtus and Gorm deck. Like, I just really love everything that green and black is up to.
That's sick. Next quick hit, and this one is a little bit tied into the first few, but your soapbox card. What card do you have to get up on a soapbox card, or what card makes you feel like you have to educate anybody whenever they play it or don't play it or play it incorrectly?
I feel like you got this question from my listeners.
This is a tough one.
Or probably from my co-hosts, actually, because I have had a bit of a rant on an episode of the EDHRECast, because I don't personally like Azuri Claw of Progress all that much. Particularly Azuri Claw of Progress, he's a Simic commander that gives you experience counters whenever you get creatures with power 2 or less, and then he puts +1 counters onto a creature for each experience counter that you have. And while +1 counters are definitely a thing within the Simic wheelhouse, that first line of text, the getting experience for tiny creatures, 0% of that is green or blue. That is a very red and white ability. So it's bonkers to me that Kalemni, in the cycle of Commander 2015 commanders that all were focused on experience, it's bonkers to me that Kalemni got this, I get an experience whenever you play a big creature that costs a bunch of mana, when that's never been what red and white have been about. If you look at any red and white card like Break Through the Line or, Fell the Mighty and Elspeth abilities, red and white are so good at making tiny tokens and focusing on tiny tokens. They've got tons of cards that have effects for creatures with power 2 or less. And then green and blue have always been about casting really big creatures. So I really don't like Azuri because I feel like they had an opportunity to do a truly Boros thing in that Commander 2015 product, and they completely squandered it by letting green and blue do the thing that they shouldn't be doing. And I just don't like it when other colors co-opt the limited space that Boros already has.
Yeah, it's not like they squandered it. It's like they, somewhere in the file, you know what I bet you happened? Two people were like rushing to get it to the printers, and they were running like down perpendicular hallways, and they met at the water cooler. Two of them smashed into each other, and all the cards and papers and files went flying up. Oh yeah, this one went here, this one went here, this one went here. And somebody had the Kalemne file, and the other person had the Azuri file, but they switched mana costs.
It does flummox me a lot. And I don't even, like, if Azuri is supposed to be Phyrexian now, then why is he using +1 counters? None of the cards in New Phyrexia had +1 counters on them. There were -1 counters in that set. Yeah. Like, even from a flavor perspective, it doesn't make a lot of sense to me. That's kind of one of the main soapbox things that I have. I also have similar emotions about Muldrotha and Yarok. I don't think that they are necessarily in the correct colors either. I think that Wizards is going through a bit of a difficult time finding precisely what white needs to be doing, because they keep on giving some abilities that should be more unique to white to other colors. Like Muldrotha, I feel like could be Abzan, or Yarok could be Esper, but Azuri is the main one that I really think that's a Boros ability rather than a Simic commander.
Yeah, you know what? It really feels like they're given everything over the last year or so to green, and white is just really getting nothing. And you know what? Yeah, maybe Yarok or Muldrotha could have been in white. Probably doesn't make sense from a flavor or Vorthos perspective, and that's why we see it the way that it is, but I feel you on that for sure. Next quick hit. Last one. Second last one.
Okay.
Your best piece of advice to aspiring Commander players, young Magic players, people entering into the Magic the Gathering force, as it were. The game is expanding, it's growing. What can you say to these people?
Oh, goodness, that's rather a big question, isn't it?
It is a little bit, and it ties into the next one, and it ties into our topic a little bit. It ties into what you do, right? You are one of the main people with your finger on the pulse at EDHREC. You see the articles, you see the data, you've got, the big Twitter account with the cast, and it's like, what do you say to these people who come to your site, the site that you work with, and your cast? What do you say to them?
I guess, so this is probably going to be a bit of a corny answer, but this is something that does matter to me a lot, since what I studied in college was writing, and one of my favorite aspects of writing is the fact that it basically forces you to be an empathetic person. Whenever you read, you're in someone else's headspace, and I've always really enjoyed that about the reading experience and about writing and about editing as well. And I would also, I guess, want folks who are learning to play this game, or any game, to also make sure that they try as much as possible to escape their own mind cage, as it were, and get into someone else's headspace too. Because when you're playing a game, the stuff that you find fun might not necessarily be the things that other people find fun. But if you are taking that empathetic perspective and seeing, you know, the impact that your actions have on other people, and you're seeing that the things that you do are also causing other people to have fun, that's really the most important feature about this particular game, especially when it's multiplayer. Making sure that you have the ability to look at the game through the eyes of someone else has been one of the more rewarding experiences for me.
Yeah, you know what? You said a couple things there. I had a big question with lots to unpack. You had a big answer with lots to unpack for me. You mentioned empathy. You're the second person to come on here and talk about empathy. And one of the reasons I think that might be, you've told me off air, and when we were kind of talking about topics for this show, you have a fairly interesting magic dynamic. Your entire family plays magic, correct?
That is correct. My entire family, my brothers, my stepdad, and my mom.
That is, I think, a little bit unique. Like, everybody gets in because, you know, somebody they played with in high school got them in, or somebody at their work plays, or maybe them and their dad picked it up, like my backstory. But your entire family plays. Tell me about that. Give me the backstory with that.
Yeah, this was, let's see, back in 2004, we originally started with the set Darksteel, but didn't really commit to the game until probably 2005 in the original Ravnica block. But my entire family has always been playing games together because my folks correctly deduced that if they wanted to have anything to do with us kids, they'd probably need to be able to speak our language and learn what we like doing. So my brothers and I had gone through things like Yu-Gi-Oh! And Duel Masters, and Magic was kind of the apotheosis of all that. Sort of the big boy game that we all leveled up into. And so when we found Magic, my folks all started playing in. Each family member got a color. So I have 3 brothers. One of them, when we first started playing, was a bit too young to start learning just yet. But when we did start playing, each one of us got a different color. So my mom started learning on blue. My stepdad started learning on black. My other brothers got white and green, and I kind of got stuck with red. And we would play big multiplayer games that were genuinely terrible, but we each found some starter decks at local shops, and we started playing in this Darksteel set. And like I said, we kind of started learning because of a friend of a friend. But here's the thing, the guy who taught us all to play, he used slivers, so it was kind of a rough start.
No.
So we didn't exactly keep with it for too long. But once Ravnica came out, another one of our friends came over with this thing called Magic, and we were like, oh yeah, we actually know how to play. And we all were so taken with the cards in Ravnica that we decided to kick back into it. And it was really, really awesome when we did, and our family has just stuck with it ever since. We play all types of games, board games all the time, Mysterium and Coup and stuff like that, but Magic is always our go-to.
Yeah, you know what, knowing that your whole family plays, one of my other questions was going to be like, do you guys have any other hobbies? Did you just play Magic all the time? I come from a space where like Magic was the only game that I ever played, and if my whole family played, I would never want to do anything else.
We love playing games. Coup, I mentioned, Mysterium has been great. My mom especially, she kicks our butt at the game Splendor. Betrayal at House on the Hill is really awesome. So yeah, we love playing games, but Magic is always the sort of the cornerstone. It's one of the things that we always come back to.
That's unreal. So you got into it in Mirrodin block, which, okay, fine, you weren't playing competitive, so you weren't subject to the original affinity with artifact lands before they were banned, and the mistake that was Skull Clamp, right? Like, we'll put a -1 on there. It's going to make it too bad even to play, right? And you were taught with slivers. So a lot of people, if they had those two exact experiences, might have said, oh yeah, this game's no fun. Why is it that you guys wanted to give it another shot? Was it just because you really liked the friend that came over with Ravnica, or was it a family thing that you were looking for a game to pick up, or was it because Ravnica is one of the best sets of all time?
I mean, it probably sounds a little cheap to say a mix of all three, but it is really that. I think that we always wanted some type of creative outlet. That's been a really nice thing that our family has particularly cherished. This is a place where we were able to show how much we've grown. Every time that we come back at a family gathering, games are kind of a piece of glue or something. Like it is actually a part of the family for us to show our creativity with these new things that we've done and to sort of challenge each other. So the fact that Ravnica was also one of the best sets and where we got to see things that we that adapted and evolved the stuff that we had learned how to play with, that was really good. I don't know, I saw the card Lightning Helix and I was just a goner. I had to play the game again. And then everyone else in the family sort of followed suit because it was just such a great way for us all to keep connected.
Everybody followed suit and also played Lightning Helix because it was one of the best cards in the set?
Well, no, because we all kept with the colors that we liked. I started with the Lightning Helixy stuff, but eventually Future Sight came out and I found out what the Dredge strategy could enable with the Future Sight stuff. And I was a goner as soon as I found out what Living End stuff could do. It was just absolutely beautiful. But my family has largely stuck with the colors that they learned on. So my stepdad still plays an awesome black-white life gain deck. My mom has stuck with blue and has adapted it into a Voltron deck. Funny enough, my youngest brother does have a Sliver deck now. So we've all kind of stuck with the stuff that we learned at. But it has been a really great place for us to all share with each other, basically.
Yeah. So you live in, I'll say, Seattle area.
Yeah, definitely.
Does your family live close to you, or do you go home for the holidays?
They live about an hour south, sort of around the Tacoma area, so it's pretty easy to visit. But I guess, does that count as home for the holidays? But they are pretty local.
Yeah, I count it as home. My family lives about an hour and a half north of me. I call that home for the holidays. It counts. You got to drive there. It's like you get a coffee before you drive there. It's that counts, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And here's the thing. So we are, I'm here talking about how fantastic it is that my family plays, and that's beautiful. And we're recording right now before the American holiday Thanksgiving, where I just want to acknowledge a lot of people will not have a family unit that they can go back to. I'm lucky because I have this half of my biological family, one that my mom and my stepdad have cultivated so well that it feels, robust and crazy enough to be a whole big family. But I also have a found family here in Seattle, one where the connection is deeper than just, I happen to be related to these people. And that found family gives me fulfillment and support in ways that my original family does not, cannot, did not, stuff like that. You do have a lot of... There's a lot of good stuff that comes from having both of those spaces. So, some folks are just here to play Magic the Gathering for the Magic part, but others among us are also here to play Magic the Gathering for the gathering part. So it is really awesome that I have this dynamic within my biological family, but having this dynamic within a found family is just as important.
You should just host my show. That's where I was going to go with that. So, yeah. I say every week or almost every week when I talk about the Commander ad Populum Discord channel that we are like a little bit of a family. And you hit the nail right on the head. There is not always a biological family. Lots of times over the holidays or on weekends, evenings, whatever it is, whenever you play, or when we travel and go to events especially, we meet up with these people that we know from online or from playing Magic or from, Facebook groups or message boards. Like I talked about MTG Salvation just last week, and I met a guy on Twitter that inspired one of my original Commander decks, and we started talking and emailing back and forth, and it's like I knew him my whole life because, I read a bunch of his work and I looked at his decks, and the game brought us together. And now he, very much like me, is having his first child in the next few months, and he's, a dad. He's in the working force. He's going to have to split time between Magic and work and family, and he's juggling all these things that I have just recently done, and we still have common ground in Magic together after all these years, and I never even met the guy.
Yeah, and if I can gush a bit more, I guess I don't know that I ever appreciated until, hindsight allowed me to, how much of an influence my family really had on my formative years, especially my older brother. He has not kept up with the game as much, but he really did help with sort of letting me cultivate that nerdy aspect of my personality. He was very popular in high school, and so he would be the one to bring friends home. And I was a very I still am a very introverted person. I'm really good at making people think that I'm an extrovert, but I really am an introverted person. So when he would bring friends home, the friends that he brought home would also be interested in learning how to play. And eventually they became my friends too, or just my friends. And so that was also a really intense piece of development for me, because my older brother had basically blazed a trail for me, which is exactly what older brothers are supposed to do. And it's only now, decades later, that I even realized how important that was for me as a kid, to give me a space where I could, become the nerd that I was always meant to be.
It's actually funny. I think of that sometimes when I play Magic, or the way that I think about deck building or in-game scenarios, especially the very social and political nature of multiplayer Commander. I think back to some decision that I made at work, or some difficult conversation I had in my old job, or some thing that my dad taught me, about XYZ thing, and now I'm relating it to Magic, or vice versa, some line of critical thinking that I developed from playing games, and then I'm taking that out into the real world. That whole kind of, I guess, topic is relevant to you as well, and that's actually pretty crazy.
Yeah.
That sounds like I just did a really bad job interviewing you. I'm just made a statement and I told you what the statement is. It's like, oh, but you know what? I'm a little bit lost for words, because you talking about your brother reminded me of my dad, and it's like,
well, so I mean, that's, I guess, another thing. I don't know. I guess I can touch on as well. I do have sort of, I guess, half of my original family, because so I am a gay man, and when I came out, it was kind of like a Thanos snap, because half the people in my social group immediately vanished, including my biological father. And that was devastating. But, the friends who stuck with me are the friends that I still have today, even outside of, the people who are related to me. And those will be lifelong friends. And having something like Magic that you can use to make more lifelong friends is really awesome. When you overhear a friend that you met through Magic and they're sticking up for you, even when they don't know that you're just around the corner and that you can hear them. And that's not the kind of thing that you can forget, like, at all. And I guess, like, I want to mention for a moment that I'm also still extraordinarily lucky that half of my family was even supportive at all. A lot of people don't have that. A lot of people, like my husband's family, started from a place of, we'd rather have a dead son than a gay son. And it took years of patience and work and pain for him to show them who he is and for them to be able to see it. He's also a person of color, and his cultural attachment to the notion of family runs so much deeper than mine. I get to see people who look like me in our media, but he doesn't really. I guess if I can paraphrase the YouTube channel ContraPoints, I'm just trying to say that I'm not the 1%, but I am sort of the gay 1%. Like, my experience here is not universal. I got lucky in a lot of ways that only hindsight has allowed me to appreciate. So I'm not trying to gush about, oh, it's so cool that my family plays. There are a lot of ways that a game like this can help you forge connections that matter much farther down the line.
All right, everybody, that's going to end the first half of the interview with Joey. Big thanks to Joey for being here with us tonight, taking time out of his evening. He is a busy guy, so I do appreciate that very much. Big thank you to FusionGamingOnline.com. They are there for all of you and your family's Black Friday, Thanksgiving, holiday needs, whatever it may be. And of course, big thank you to all the Patreon supporters, patreon.com/CADPopcast. If you'd like to comment or be part of the discussion, of course, you can find the threads for this episode and all episodes of Commander Ad Populum over on the Commander Ad Populum Facebook page or at CADPopcast on Twitter. So that's it. We'll be back next week to conclude our interview with Joey. Until then, everybody, I'll see you next Wednesday.